If you were disillusioned by the appearance of the very goofy-looking Raizo in last week's episode of One Piece, then fear not, he shows off his ninja skills in this week's incredibly exciting episode, which has also got one of the biggest story elements that we have seen from the entire Zou arc, the introduction of the Red Poneglyphs, otherwise known as the Road Poneglyphs, which hold the secret to finding the final island, Raftel. According to Frankie, all boys love ninjas, and honestly, I have to agree with him. Ninjas kick ass. It's why I love the Naruto anime series so much. In fact, this episode right here in many ways was kind of like a veiled homage to Naruto in general, because Raizo himself, despite the fact that he looks incredibly goofy and has a completely weird and disproportionate looking Wario-esque body, actually has some pretty cool kick-ass ninja skills, and he gets to show them off in this week's episode, and he uses a lot of the stereotypical stuff that you'd see from ninjas. He can disappear, he can throw shuriken, he can make shadow clones of himself. If you try to attack him, he can replace his physical body with a log. If you're not getting it yet, Raizo is kind of like this hilarious caricature of all of the main characters from the Naruto series. It's made even better by the fact that Raizo's Japanese voice actor, Masashi Ebara, just so happens to be the voice of Might Guy from the Naruto series. It's very apparent when you hear him, and it can be kind of distracting at times, but I have to admit, it was a pretty solid choice. But the first half of the episode, hell, 90% of the episode, is essentially devoted to comedy and just seeing Raizo in action. I love how, at the beginning, Luffy and all of the male members of the Straw Hats and Trafalgar Law just are not impressed by Raizo whatsoever. And Raizo is taking his whole ninja thing very seriously. To him, showing off his ninja skills would sort of cheapen his abilities. He has to keep them in the shadows. That is the shinobi way, after all. However, when he sees how disappointed they are, he decides to essentially turn his ninja abilities into a cheap sideshow. But it's a great excuse to see a lot of cool ninja-fied techniques. And I have to admit, his character actually grew on me a little bit more in this episode. I'm still not the biggest fan of Raizo, but still, he fits in perfectly with Kinemon and Kanjuro. All three of these guys together just have some of the most craziest, ridiculous designs from the series, and that's saying a lot. It does start to get a little more serious when they decide to go on top of the whale and look at all of the destruction which was caused by Jack's crew, and they all start to break down and hold back their man tears. However, there is one element of this episode which is incredibly important, and that's when Nekomamushi and Inu Arashi decide to show the Straw Hat crew this red poneglyph, which is known as the Road Poneglyph, which will basically take you to the final island of Raftel, the location of One Piece. According to Inu Arashi, there are 4 of these red poneglyphs, and when you manage to get all of them and decipher the message that they hold, they'll give you the secret location to the island of Raftel. Luckily, Nico Robin is there with the crew, so she is able to decipher it, and it was just great to have an episode that brought some more importance to her. Although I felt her flashback was kind of unnecessary. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of One Piece? Basically, it's just a lot of Raizo shenanigans and the introduction of the Road Poneglyphs, which are incredibly important for the series. It's not too often that they actually bring up the namesake of the series, and whenever they do, it's always a really big event. The concept of the Road Poneglyphs also just opens up a lot of potential for the rest of the series. Clearly, the Straw Hat Pirates have 3 more of these red poneglyphs to discover. It also lets us know that we're getting just this much closer to the eventual conclusion of the series. That is, of course, if One Piece just decides to conclude. It seems like a lot of different anime and manga seem to be going on forever lately, so I can't wait to see how One Piece is going to handle that. But most of this episode was just devoted to the shenanigans of Raizo, who, like I said, despite his incredibly goofy appearance, it was really fun just watching him bounce around the walls and use his super stereotypical ninja abilities. Although you have to feel slightly bad for him, because everybody just hated him at the beginning of the episode. They just did not care for him whatsoever, and he was trying to keep his cool, letting them know that your thoughts about what real ninjas are like are all fantasy, but then he just decides to bust out all of these awesome ninja-fied techniques, which hopefully we'll get to see some more of that in the rest of the series. At this point, including in the manga version, we haven't really seen that much more from Raizo, so soak in this episode if you want some good ninja action. Ultimately, however, this episode is all about the road poneglyphs. It's such an important element of the series, and it amazes me that there's only going to have to be 4 of these things in order to get to the island, and the fact that we already have 1 means that we're just about there. Although, getting the other red poneglyphs is probably not going to be as easy as this. They're probably not just going to meet someone who's going to show it to them. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that a lot of the most important characters in the series, like the emperors or maybe even the world government, have access to these incredibly rare poneglyphs. We're just going to have to see how that's going to unfold. Otherwise, this was an okay episode of One Piece. Not that much happened, but there were some really big story elements, so you gotta check out this week's episode of One Piece. So this was a funny and super exciting episode of One Piece. It had probably some of the best character expressions that I've seen from the series, especially at the very end of the episode when they discover the importance of the road poneglyphs. So check out this week's episode of One Piece, guys. I'm gonna give this one right here a 4 out of 5. Not a super exciting episode and very slow with not that much happening, but there are some important details that you cannot miss. So check it out, One Piece fans. If any of you guys did watch this week's episode, make sure to tell me what you thought about it in the comments section below. I know a lot of people weren't really gelling with Raizo in the last episode, but do you like him in this one? Did you like seeing all of his ninja abilities? Do you actually think he is going to be very helpful to the Straw Hat crew? And where are the other road poneglyphs? How are the Straw Hats going to find them? And what do you want to see from the rest of the One Piece anime series? Thank you guys so much for watching this review. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and make sure to like this video if you liked it, and leave me a comment or 2. I will see you next time. And as always, stay dandy, baby.